Hey, folks, welcome back to the Rugby Ascendant segment here on Chris Wyatt Africa and the Rugby Ascendant channel itself. My special feature guest today is from Rugby ATL. This is devastatingly handsome Samoan sitting right there in front of me. That's the gentleman right there, Martini Talapusi. Welcome to the conversation. It's a pleasure to have you on with me.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I got to be honest, with all these Rugby Atlanta players, I've been accused of kidnapping all these South Africans and hiding them in my basement because so many South Africans I've interviewed so many South Africans. I've interviewed a few Canadians and some New Zealanders, Stephen Brett and Tay, but you're the first Samoan I've had on the channel here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, I saw that you started playing rugby at a pretty young age, 5.
Yeah. Obviously, growing up back home, it's rugby's a big sport. That's actually the main sport. So, no, I picked up a rugby ball at the age of 5. I guess all my family members play rugby. Even my little cousins just played for Samoa a couple of months ago. So, rugby's a big sport in the family. So, it's quite easy to pick up.
But probably one of the things, obviously Samoa is a big rugby place and that's a great place to grow up learning rugby, but you got an opportunity to go abroad and actually spend some time in New Zealand in your development as a rugby player, didn't you?
Yeah. So I got a rugby scholarship to attend St. Andrew's College in Christchurch. So, yeah, that was a big move for me. Moving in, I was actually born in Wellington, moved back to Samoa, and then was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to come back to New Zealand and play my rugby there. So yeah, I spent a couple of years in New Zealand playing rugby and then came stateside.
So are you technically a Kiwi? Because I detect more of a Kiwi accent than anything from Samoa.
On my passport, yes, I'm a Kiwi.
Well, listen, Steve Hansen there was speaking out in the defense of the Pacific nations, trying to get more test matches against top ranked teams. I've made the same argument for all of the tier 2 and tier 3 teams for years, particularly for Canada, the US and places like, what's another one here? Chile, countries like that. But I've always said that Steve Hansen, the reason he did that is because the Pacific Islands are his farm system. The entire Kiwi team is loaded with people from Pacific Islands. So he's got a little bit of self-interest in there and why he wants folks to to come from the islands. But there are a lot of Fijians, a lot of Samoans who rock up in New Zealand, aren't there?
Yeah, pretty much. I think for the Pacific Islands, there's not a lot of development going on. I mean, you get athletes, kids with talent, but if they want to grow that talent and develop more, your best option is to move to New Zealand and play rugby there. And because of that, it's like Pacific Islanders tend to lose the players that they have because they go to New Zealand and they become eligible. And then obviously that dream of playing for Pacific Island turns into wanting to play for the All Blacks.
No doubt. No big surprise. Yeah. And as like I said, Steve Hansen, he's no longer with the All Blacks, but he sold us his farm system. So yeah. Well, hey, listen, it's Major League Rugby has become the farm system now for Canada and the USA. No doubt about that. It's long overdue though. We really need a professional rugby here. So it's a nice change. Now you've been around. You were in New Zealand, obviously. You started out in Samoa as a kid playing. You went to New Zealand, but then later, I think you came to San Francisco.
Yes, that's correct. So I came over. I'm not sure if you remember the pro rugby.
Oh, I do.
In 2016. Yep. I think everyone knows about that. So
I was an Ohio Aviators supporter.
Okay. Yeah. So I came over for that. San Francisco, played my rugby. Well, my parents were already here. My parents, so it was an easy decision for me to come over. Came over to San Francisco, played with them, and then I decided to stay back and finish my schooling here. And then played with Life West out in San Francisco. And then, been here since.
Now, is Life West, is that affiliated with Life University there in Marietta, Georgia, or is it something else?
No, they're not affiliated. I think someone from Life might have started Life West. I'm not quite sure of the history, but it's a chiropractic school as well. It's a big chiropractic school in the Bay Area. So, but they've also got a men's rugby team. So that's where I played my rugby in San Francisco.
Now, I interviewed Neats last week, and we talked a bit about 404 rugby. It looks like you're kind of a product of 404 rugby. You came up with Atlanta and initially started at 404. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I came down in the fall of 2019 as ATL was starting up. And then obviously played through that 404 season. I'd just come off an injury, so it was nice for me to come down and actually play some rugby before then my last season started up. So, no, that was good. I think 404 is a good development pathway for kids that actually want to make it into the MLR, So it's a good product that ATL is putting out.
Well, what's it like? Are there any other Samoans on the team with you there? Or are you the flying solo?
we've actually got a few. I think we actually have two. Lincoln CE, Louis Satama, who we just got from Austin, and then and the missile, and Jeremy.
Okay.
So
well, yeah, but Jeremy's an American. He's never been to Samoa, so yeah, that's he's of Samoan heritage. That's true. Yeah. So I kind of asked about that. I said, "Have you ever been to Samoa?" He's like, "No, I haven't been yet." So and he sounds like he's from the Midwest. That's a Midwest accent, even though he's up there from Washington State. So but no, that's fair. He's of Samoan heritage, but and recent Samoan heritage, his grandparents. But no, I asked because I mean, it must be a strange situation. You're walking out there practicing or on the pitch for a game, and you suddenly hear all this weird language. You're like, "What's that?" and it's the South Africans speaking Afrikaans to each other.
Oh yeah, sometimes we all get mixed up. They just start yelling at you the calls, and I'm like, "Wait, there's a different language. I don't speak that language." And they're like, "Oh, sorry." So it gets mixed up sometimes in training, but like I think everyone's starting to catch on and just go with it.
Well, that's what tends to happen over time. Is that, in fact, for the South African teams, it's always been an advantage because they do international tests, and people you can't read the lineouts, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think little chatter is starting to get picked up from the boys. So sometimes they just speak in Afrikaans, and everyone's like, "All right, cool, we know what that is," and we just go with it.
Well, that's pretty awesome. What's been the best part about signing and playing there with Atlanta? What's been the best thing for you?
I think for me, it's development side. I think obviously with my injury, it was a tough one knowing it was a season-ending injury, and then obviously you take the time, do what you got to do to get over it, and then on a positive note, it's good to just stand on the sideline and watch. Actually, you get to learn more of the game, doing analysis, things like that. It gives you a more clearer picture, and it's obviously it'd be better to be out there running with the team, but just being on the sidelines helped a lot too, just from the mental aspect, and then also analysis-wise.
Well, it's interesting, because I interviewed Tay earlier this season. We talked about how he switched from playing outside, inside, and back and forth. And he said it's really been beneficial to his game, and kind of like the same point you're making about being on the sidelines and getting the aspects of understanding what's going on in the game. For him, moving inside and outside, he really got a different appreciation for the game, and he thought it made him a much better player. So I suspect what you've done on the sidelines when you weren't able to play has probably improved your game as well, even though you weren't on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's giving me a better understanding of different scenarios, different situations, and like whichever part of the game it's on. I think it's given me a really good picture of what I need to do or where I need to be, things like that when I do come back. So especially with our tech system and our defensive system, I think just taking a step back and looking at that from a different angle, I think is really giving me a bigger picture of what I need to be doing come next year.
Well, what are you looking forward to? You looking to stick with professional rugby? It seems to be something you're enjoying.
Yeah, I think so. I think for the next couple of years, at least, yes. And then obviously, haven't really thought about past that yet, but got a few things in the works that will help me when I'm done with rugby.
Well, that's excellent. You're definitely a world traveler. A lot of people we talk to interview have only been to one or two places, but you've definitely been around the globe and experienced it. So I'm guessing because Samoa is part of the United States as far as relationship wise and long-term ties and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of culture that's shared, even though there's a Pacific Island culture out there. You guys get a lot of American culture influence. Was there any and being in New Zealand, which is I don't want to insult the New Zealanders, but but they watch all our TV and they have Wendy's and McDonald's and Starbucks. So I don't think for you there probably been much in the way of culture shock when you first came to the States or when you went to San Francisco. But is there anything about the States or maybe Atlanta that just kind of like this is different? You weren't really expecting this.
I think it's just how big it is. I think coming from Samoa to New Zealand was a big shock, and then obviously coming here, I was just like, it's 10 times the size of New Zealand. Atlanta itself has got more people in it than the whole of New Zealand. So, and I think everything's just so big, everything's just so fast here. I think that was the biggest thing. In terms of the rugby and the sports, the atmosphere here is like none. I think people back home want to experience the atmosphere of the sports culture here. So that's something that I enjoy a lot. I think going to a baseball game or a basketball game is it's different. It's an American experience that I think everyone wants to at least go to at some point.
No, I get you. I appreciate that. I've lived all over the world, all over Africa, over Europe, Middle East. I've been to New Zealand, Australia, and America is definitely an interesting place, different. But when you think it's big now, one day if you ever get the chance, drive from the East Coast across the Midwest, through the mountain states, all the way out to the West Coast. And then you'll really be like, oh my goodness, this place really is big.
I actually did that when my fiance moved down to Atlanta. So we were both in San Francisco. And then when she decided to move down with me, I flew back and we drove across country. So we went through Yosemite, all the national parks, I guess, through Denver and then down to Atlanta. So, I mean, that was a fun time, and it's big.
No, it is a huge country. Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today. And thanks a lot, Martini, for your
thanks for having me.
But let me ask you, it's my pleasure. Let me ask you this question, because people I'm sure they're going to ask this question. Is that a common name, the given name, or are your parents fond of martinis? I mean, where does that come from? It's a cool name, but you know, people are going to ask that question.
Yeah, no, I've been asked that a lot of times, but no, it's not a common name. A Peace Corps that came to Samoa back in the day was named Martini, and obviously he lived with my grandparents at the time while he was doing his mission there. So when I came about, I think my parents decided to name me after him. He actually lives in New York right now. So I think my mom and my dad are still in contact with him. So yeah, but it's definitely not a common name, that's for sure.
Well, it's definitely unique. It's pretty cool. I mean, I ask, and it's in all fairness, because my name is not really Chris. I was born on Christmas Day. It's William Martin. So William Martin White. So people are like, it's really handy though, because people, they pretend they know you and like, hey, Bill, Willie. I don't even hear, just goes right past me. So, so I always, when I see an interesting given name or surname, I always ask. And Martini's definitely an interesting and unique surname. So that's pretty cool. So Martini, hey, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure. Good luck with Rugby Atlanta the rest of the season. And we'll catch you here sometime in the future. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Cheers.
See you.